32. Okay, I did my presentation on whether lowering the drink age can help lower the drunk driving rates. Just to kind of start off so you get a feel for the issue of drunk driving is, I put some statistics related to it. One thing I found really interesting was that the damages and death costs caused by drunk driving was over like 44 billion a year, which is kind of a morbid thing you don't often think about when you're thinking about drunk driving because oftentimes people die, but I thought it was kind of interesting like, how much it costs a year. Another thing was that 30 people are killed each day, which I found was kind of a big number per day. And that like the age groups with the most drunk driving was actually 21 to 25-year-olds, which was 27%, which was kind of crazy. One side of my argument was that lowering the age can help drunk driving rates, and a point to bring up was this, that it would help the negative connotations with drinking. That oftentimes these organizations, when they're trying to prevent people from drinking, they often create a negative light in which drinking is shown, which isn't a bad thing. These organizations are trying to stop alcohol-related accidents, which is a good thing, but it oftentimes shows drinking in a negative light, which creates an environment that isn't exactly comfortable to talk about drinking, and it oftentimes leads kids and people kind of ignorant to drinking and how to be responsible with it. And that in lowering it, we create a more safe drinking environment, and we create a more safe drinking environment. And what I mean by that is that if we were to lower it, it oftentimes would be low enough that they would drink in the household with their parents, and they could learn good habits from their parents who have oftentimes been drinking for years. And that it would just create a more safe environment. They're not going off and just finding alcohol and drinking in the middle of the parking lot and then having to find a way home, which oftentimes isn't a safe way. And just kind of to show an example, the other countries, the lowest percentage here for alcohol-related traffic deaths is Germany, and coming in at 7%. And just kind of get a feel, the U.S. is actually rated 28%, so we're coming in third or fourth in there, which isn't good. But Germany is coming in at 7%, and their drinking age is 16. And I'm not saying we should lower it to 16, but just to kind of get an idea of how Germany's drinking is kind of integrated into their culture. It's a very common thing, comfortable among households, and you can see I'm not saying it's 100% the reason for that, but I think it definitely played a role in how low their drinking is. That they can learn these good habits from their parents, and to learn to drink responsibly, and that what alcohol can do when consumed. So the other side of my argument is that lowering it won't help the drunk driving rates. And oftentimes an argument brought up with that is that if adults can't handle this alcohol responsibly, how can teens handle it? These younger kids, they're not even out of high school oftentimes, or they're fresh in college. How can they handle alcohol more responsibly than these adults who have been handling it for years? And another main point, I think this is often the stickler for why they don't change it, is that teen brains are still developing, and because of that, with excessive drinking, their brains can actually be damaged permanently. And I think it's kind of a long-term effect that kind of scares the people, and it just causes permanent damage for them long-term for the rest of their life kind of thing. So it's big thing, and it's often a reason why they don't want to change it. Because of that, I put in a reason effects of alcohol kind of show regardless of either side, alcohol can affect you permanently and affect your life. So I thought it kind of shows that, and in this video I thought it kind of explained the effects of alcohol. It shows specifically it shows the effects of alcohol on the teen brain and how it's still developing and what can happen from that.
Two parts of the brain that are particularly affected by alcohol during the teenage years are the hippocampus and the prefrontal lobe. The hippocampus plays a pivotal role in learning and memory formation. Studies of adolescents show that heavy and extended alcohol use is associated with a 10% reduction in the size of the hippocampus. It also shows that the function of the hippocampus is uniquely sensitive to alcohol at this age, and that alcohol may be poisonous to its nerve cells, damaging or destroying them. As a result, teenagers who regularly drink have difficulty creating new, lasting memories or recalling information. The prefrontal lobe is important for planning, judgment, decision-making, impulse control, and language. This area of the brain continues to change during the teenage years and into the early 20s. Research with heavy drinking adolescents showed that these young people have smaller prefrontal lobes than young people of the same age who do not drink. While research
Okay, I saw like you kind of did a good way, like a good. It showed the effects of alcohol in like kind of like easy to understand, like good way of showing it visually. But with that, I thought I'd kind of bring up just like some biases so you can like fully understand. Like, obviously they're not lying; that is like facts, and that it can permanently damage the brain. But I thought I'd bring up some other like interesting facts that because that video was actually, I believe, it was made by the American Addiction Centers. They're focusing on worst case scenario drinking. Like they're thinking excessively drinking nonstop all day, like every day of the week, and that's how it permanently affects forever. And like while that's kind of worst case scenario, oftentimes people aren't drinking excessively like that. Like that's more the exception. Like it's not oftentimes how it is. And another fact I thought I'd bring up is that when they mention like the developing brain, the brain doesn't actually fully develop until 25 years. Which is actually higher than our current drinking age, which is 21 years old, which I found kind of interesting. The video shows a like counseling, so it kind of shows that side of it. But it shows like the negative effects of alcohol, which are still true. It can permanently affect the brain. And my thoughts in conclusion. When I first was going into this, I saw like 21 years old. Like I thought that was a good like legal drinking age, was like right in between like high school's finishing and going to college, and I thought it was kind of like a good like intro into adulthood. Like they get a few years to kind of get used to living on their own if they're doing so, and so I thought it was kind of a good in between. But after doing some research, although that's a good reasonable age, I think a lot can be gained for lowering the drinking age to like 18. Like I think 21, it's reasonable, but I don't think it's ideal. I think a lot can be gained from lowering it to 18, and like so they can start. Even like if they can like drinking with their parents and learning how to drink responsibly and not like learning these bad habits in college or from other kids who are learning themselves, like you're kind of learning in a safe environment with your parents. You can learn these good habits, and in doing so those good habits can transfer like long term and can help like you teaching your kids or just help like lasting effects for like future generations. I think a lot can be gained from lowering it, and I just found that it was more lowering it will help create that kind of environment, and lowering it can help lowering the drunk drive rates because of that as effect. So yeah, and these are my works cited, and yeah, all done.